Pay attention tonight, because something is moving into place that many people will never consciously notice. In fact, most will pass straight through it while they sleep, unaware that a profound shift has already begun beneath the surface of their awareness. On Saturday, June 6th, the moon enters Pisces, and the moment that transition occurs, a doorway within you begins to unlock. Not a symbolic doorway, not merely an emotional mood change, but a deeper level of perception that has remained hidden behind layers of noise, distraction, and mental conditioning for far longer than you realize. This is not the kind of lunar movement that drifts through the sky unnoticed. It is not the sort of energy that brushes against your life and then disappears without consequence. What begins tonight creates a 72-hour passage, a concentrated period during which the distance between intuition and certainty becomes remarkably small. During these days, insights that once seemed impossible to reach may arrive with unusual force, and things you have struggled to understand could suddenly become impossible to ignore. If the last several days have felt strange, if your thoughts have seemed unusually scattered, if concentration has felt difficult, if conversations have felt harder to navigate, or if you have found yourself questioning your own conclusions, there is a reason for it. What felt like confusion was not necessarily confusion at all. It was preparation. There has been a larger process unfolding throughout the entire week, one that many people never recognized because they were too focused on the discomfort itself. Yet the discomfort was the message. The uncertainty was part of the design. Before you can understand what this Pisces moon is bringing, you must understand the chain of events that led here. Nothing about this moment arrived in isolation. Every experience from the previous days has been gradually positioning you for what happens next. Think back to June 1st. That was the day Mercury, the planet associated with thought, communication, analysis, and mental organization, entered Cancer. The shift may have appeared subtle on the surface, but internally something significant began to change. Your attention started drifting away from pure logic and toward feeling. Memories surfaced more easily. Old emotions became harder to ignore. Topics connected to family, belonging, personal history, and emotional security moved closer to the center of your awareness. Decisions that once seemed straightforward suddenly carried emotional weight. Thoughts became less mechanical and more personal. Many people interpreted this shift as distraction, but it was actually a movement away from intellectual certainty and toward emotional depth. Then, only a short time later, another influence intensified the process. On June 3rd, Mercury formed a square with Neptune. This is one of those astrological interactions that rarely feels comfortable because it places two very different forces into direct tension. Mercury seeks clarity. Neptune dissolves boundaries. Mercury wants facts. Neptune operates through symbols, feelings, imagination, and mystery. When these energies collide through a square, the result often feels like standing between two worlds at once. The logical mind keeps searching for certainty, while another part of you senses that certainty alone is no longer enough. This is why so many people experienced mental fatigue, uncertainty, and a strange inability to organize their thoughts during the days leading up to this moment. It felt as though the usual tools were no longer working. It felt as though answers remained just beyond reach. Yet what if that was the point? What if the exhaustion of your analytical mind was not evidence that something was wrong, but evidence that something deeper was trying to emerge? Most people spend their lives relying almost entirely on logic because logic feels safe. It creates structure. It creates predictability. It creates the illusion of control. But there are moments in life when growth requires another form of perception. There are moments when intuition must become louder than analysis. There are moments when the part of you that understands through feeling must be given room to speak. Throughout this week, the cosmos has been gradually reducing the volume of the rational mind so another voice could finally be heard. And tonight that process reaches a turning point. As the moon enters Pisces on June 6th, a different layer of awareness begins to awaken. This is the reason everything has felt so unusual. The mental fog was not necessarily an obstacle. It was the dismantling of a filter. The uncertainty was creating space for another kind of knowing. And what begins to activate now may feel far more powerful than anything you expected. Many people hear discussions about the third eye and immediately place them into the category of abstract spirituality, something distant, symbolic, or inaccessible. Yet what unfolds during this Pisces moon carries a far more personal quality. Across traditions stretching back thousands of years, Pisces has been associated with heightened intuition, inner vision, and expanded perception. These teachings often connect that energy to the pineal gland, a small structure located deep within the brain. In yogic and esoteric systems, this gland has long been associated with the Ajna chakra, the center linked to insight, intuition, and perception beyond ordinary awareness. As the moon moves through Pisces, the symbolism surrounding this connection becomes amplified. It is as though the boundary separating conscious thought from deeper subconscious information begins to soften. The veil that normally separates what you know from what you sense becomes increasingly transparent. This may explain why many people feel unusually tired as evening approaches, even after a full night of sleep. It may explain why dreams over the coming 3 nights become unusually vivid, emotionally charged, and difficult to forget. Images may appear with startling detail. Symbols may repeat. Certain experiences may feel more like messages than random dreams. You may notice flashes of insight arriving without warning. You may close your eyes and encounter colors, impressions, or imagery that seem disconnected from ordinary memory. And as these experiences begin to unfold, something important starts to become clear. What you are encountering is not merely imagination. It is the beginning of a conversation between parts of yourself that have remained separated for far too long. And the realization waiting on the other side of that conversation may change everything you thought you understood about what has been happening within you. What makes tonight different is not simply the arrival of the moon into Pisces, it is the fact that everything standing in the way of a deeper level of perception has already been gradually dismantled throughout the week. The part of you that normally evaluates every experience, labels every feeling, and immediately rejects anything that cannot be measured or explained, has been losing its grip for days. That process did not happen by accident. The Mercury square, Neptune alignment that unfolded earlier this week was not merely creating confusion. It was serving a much larger purpose. It was loosening the hold of certainty. It was exhausting the constant mental commentary that usually dominates your awareness. It was creating space. Think of it as a storm, clearing a crowded sky. At first, all you notice is the turbulence, the discomfort, the inability to see clearly. But the storm is not the destination. The clearing that follows is. By the time the moon enters Pisces tonight at 8:40, much of the resistance that would normally block deeper insight has already been weakened. The noise has been reduced, the defenses have been lowered, the filters have become thin. And because of that, what begins emerging now has the potential to arrive with unusual force. These are not random impressions drifting through your imagination. These are not vague emotional reactions without meaning. They are revelations that meet you exactly where you are. They touch the questions you have been carrying, the fears you have been avoiding, the truths you have sensed but never fully allowed yourself to acknowledge. And the first of those revelations may be far more emotional than you expect. One day, you may look back on this period and realize it was the moment you began understanding something that your mind had resisted for years: the illusion of separation. At some point during this transit, perhaps unexpectedly, perhaps during an ordinary moment that appears completely insignificant, you may experience a feeling that catches you off guard. Not a thought, not an idea, a feeling. A sudden awareness that the distance you perceive between yourself and others is not as solid as you once believed. It may arrive while sitting quietly. It may arrive during a conversation. It may arrive while watching something unfold in the world around you. Yet when it comes, it carries an unmistakable quality. For a brief moment, the walls that normally define where you end and everyone else begins seem less convincing. You recognize something familiar inside another person. You feel the humanity behind a stranger's story. You sense the hidden struggles behind someone's behavior. The reason this experience becomes so powerful under a Pisces moon is because Pisces occupies the final position in the zodiac. It carries traces of every lesson, every emotion, every stage of development that came before it. It represents completion, integration, the dissolving of boundaries. When lunar energy moves through Pisces, it often bypasses the protective structures built by the ego and touches something much deeper. Suddenly, events that previously seemed distant feel personal. A story that normally would have passed unnoticed affects you profoundly. An interaction that appears ordinary becomes emotionally significant. Someone you have known for years reveals dimensions you never truly recognized before. And in those moments, something shifts. You begin realizing that empathy is not weakness. Sensitivity is not a flaw. Emotional openness is not something to fear. They are reminders that connection exists beneath the surface of everyday life. The suffering you witness in others reflects parts of the human experience you share. The healing you create within yourself influences far more than your individual journey. This realization changes the way you move through the world because it replaces isolation with belonging. It replaces separation with participation. It reminds you that you were never carrying everything alone, even when it felt that way. And once that understanding starts settling into your awareness, another message begins, emerging immediately behind it, one that challenges the authority you have been giving your mind for far too long. This is where many people become uncomfortable, because the second revelation does not arrive as comfort. It arrives as confrontation. Throughout the past week, your mind has been attempting to solve problems using the same methods it always uses. Analyze, predict, organize, calculate. Yet despite all that effort, clarity remained elusive. The more intensely you searched for certainty, the more uncertainty seemed to grow. Many people interpreted that experience as failure. In reality, it was instruction. The universe was revealing something important. Not every answer can be reached through analysis. Not every truth is discovered through intellectual effort. Some of the most important realizations emerge from a different place entirely. They appear before evidence exists. They arrive before logic catches up. They are felt long before they can be explained. This is why the Mercury-Neptune square felt so frustrating. It exposed the limitations of pure reasoning. It showed you that there are moments when thinking harder does not bring greater understanding. Sometimes it creates more resistance. During the next 3 days, you may begin noticing flashes of certainty that seem to emerge from nowhere. You suddenly understand the energy behind a relationship. You recognize what a situation is trying to teach you. You know which direction a decision requires, even though you cannot fully explain why. These experiences will not arrive wrapped in logical arguments. They will arrive as instinct, as intuition, as a quiet internal recognition that feels stronger than any evidence you could gather. Many people immediately dismiss these moments because they cannot prove them. Yet this transit asks for something different. It asks you to listen. It asks you to acknowledge that awareness exists beyond the boundaries of analysis. The individuals who allow themselves to trust these intuitive signals may discover opportunities, solutions, and breakthroughs in the weeks ahead that seem almost impossible from their current perspective. Meanwhile, those who refuse to release their dependence on certainty may find themselves repeating familiar patterns long after the lesson has been offered. The choice is unfolding now. And whether you admit it or not, part of you already recognizes which path feels true. Yet the deepest phase of this journey has not arrived yet, because, as powerful as these first revelations are, they are only preparing you for what comes next. 2 days after the moon enters Pisces, on June 8th, the energy intensifies as the moon forms an exact square to the sun, creating the last quarter moon. Across countless traditions, this phase has long been associated with endings, release, and preparation for a new cycle. But within Pisces, release rarely feels simple. It reaches into places you thought were finished. It uncovers emotions you assumed had already been resolved. It revisits chapters you believed were closed. You may already sense the beginning of this process. Perhaps there is a heaviness that appears without explanation. Perhaps old memories are surfacing unexpectedly. Perhaps emotions connected to past experiences are returning with surprising intensity. These are not interruptions. They are invitations. Grief that never received acknowledgement. Regret connected to a road not taken. Resentment hidden beneath the appearance of forgiveness. All of it begins moving closer to the surface. And, unlike the earlier messages, this third revelation does not arrive gently. It arrives with the force of something determined to be seen. Like a powerful wave pulling back from the shore, it removes the ground you believed was stable and reveals what has been buried underneath all along. And once that process begins, there is no pretending you have not seen it. There comes a point in every transformation when insight is no longer enough. A moment arrives when awareness itself becomes a challenge, because once you truly see what is no longer aligned with your future, you can no longer pretend you do not see it. This is exactly where the energy of this Pisces moon begins pressing most intensely. The revelations are not appearing simply to inspire you. They are appearing to confront you. They are asking a question that cannot be avoided much longer. What are you still carrying that has already reached its expiration date? Beneath the surface of your daily routines, beneath the distractions and responsibilities that fill your attention, there are attachments that continue occupying space within you. Some are beliefs you inherited years ago and never questioned. Some are relationships that exist more in memory than reality. Some are identities you once needed in order to survive, but no longer need in order to grow. Yet despite their completion, they remain present, influencing your choices, shaping your reactions, and quietly determining how much of your future you are truly available to receive. This is why the last quarter moon arriving on June 8th carries such significance. Throughout history, this lunar phase has been associated with release, completion, and preparation for a new cycle. Under Pisces, however, that process becomes deeply emotional, because Pisces does not settle for superficial adjustments. It reaches beneath appearances and asks what remains unresolved within the heart itself. The honesty required now is not the kind performed for public approval. It is not the carefully constructed truth presented to friends, family, or social circles. It is the truth that emerges during the quietest moments, when there is nobody to impress and nowhere left to hide. It is the conversation you have with yourself in the middle of the night when every distraction disappears and only your deepest knowing remains. What are you still holding on to because it feels familiar? What part of your story are you preserving because letting it go would require becoming someone new? What emotional weight are you carrying simply because you have carried it for so long that you forgot it was optional? These questions are uncomfortable because they challenge attachment. Yet within this transit, they become essential. The cosmic lesson hidden within the last quarter moon is simple but powerful. New energy cannot fully enter a life that remains crowded with what has already ended. Opportunities require room. Growth requires openness. Expansion requires availability. If your attention remains anchored to outdated fears, expired expectations, and emotional burdens that no longer serve your path, then even the blessings approaching you may struggle to find a place to land. This is why release becomes so important now. Not because the universe wishes to take something away from you, but because it is attempting to prepare you for something larger than what you currently imagine. The process may arrive through tears. It may arrive through reflection. It may arrive through unexpected emotional breakthroughs that force you to acknowledge what has remained hidden beneath the surface. Whatever form it takes, the purpose remains the same. Space is being created. The clearing is happening. And if you resist the process entirely, this transit has a way of creating that space on its own. That version tends to feel far less comfortable because it arrives through circumstances rather than choice. Yet even then, the goal remains transformation. Allowing what has ended to finally leave is not loss. It is preparation. It is the opening of a doorway whose destination you cannot fully see yet. And what makes this moment even more remarkable is that while all of this inner work is unfolding beneath the surface, another astrological development is quietly building strength in the background. By June 9th, only hours after the moon completes its journey through Pisces, one of the most significant alignments of the period reaches exact perfection. Venus and Jupiter come together in Cancer. On its own, such a conjunction already carries extraordinary symbolism. Venus represents love, attraction, harmony, beauty, relationships, and personal values. Jupiter represents expansion, growth, opportunity, abundance, wisdom, and blessing. When these two planets unite, astrologers have long considered it one of the most fortunate combinations available. Yet this particular conjunction carries additional weight because it occurs within Cancer, the sign where Jupiter is exalted and able to express its gifts with exceptional strength. The symbolism here is difficult to ignore. As one cycle of release reaches completion, another cycle of expansion begins opening immediately afterward. Yet there is an important message embedded within this timing. The abundance associated with this alignment is not disconnected from the emotional work that precedes it. In fact, they are directly linked. This becomes the fourth revelation emerging from the Pisces Moon experience. The opportunities approaching you are connected to emotional openness. They are connected to authenticity. They are connected to your willingness to engage with life from the heart rather than from fear. Many people spend years believing abundance arrives primarily through force, strategy, relentless effort, or constant pursuit. Yet the symbolism of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer suggests something different. It emphasizes receptivity, connection, care, emotional intelligence, the ability to nurture meaningful relationships, the willingness to remain open even after disappointment. During this period, the greatest rewards may arrive, not through aggressive action, but through genuine alignment, through investing energy into what matters most, through showing up authentically for the people around you, through allowing yourself to receive support rather than believing you must carry everything alone. The Pisces Moon prepares you for this by dissolving barriers that have prevented deeper connection. It encourages you to soften the protective walls constructed around old wounds. It asks you to recognize that true wealth extends beyond material gain. Real abundance includes relationships that nourish the soul, opportunities that align with purpose, emotional fulfillment that cannot be purchased or manufactured. If you have used this transit to release what no longer belongs, to clear emotional clutter, and to make room within yourself, then the Venus-Jupiter conjunction arriving on June 9th may feel remarkably significant. New possibilities may appear. Meaningful conversations may emerge. Unexpected support may arrive. Doors that previously seemed closed may begin opening in ways that feel surprisingly natural. Rather than chasing opportunities, you may find opportunities moving toward you, not because of luck alone, but because you finally created space for them to enter. Yet even these blessings are not the final destination. They are preparation for something larger. Because behind the intuition, behind the emotional clearing, behind the abundance itself, there remains one final message. And this message may be the most important of all. Earlier this year, Neptune, the ruling planet of Pisces, completed a major transition after spending 14 years within its home sign. Neptune moved into Aries, introducing an entirely different energetic landscape. This shift matters because Neptune governs dreams, spirituality, imagination, intuition, and higher awareness, while Aries governs initiative, courage, action, and forward movement. Together they create a new mandate. The spiritual journey is no longer focused solely on awakening. It is focused on embodiment. It is no longer enough to receive insight. Insight must become action. It is no longer enough to understand purpose. Purpose must become movement. This is the fifth revelation. The clarity arriving through this Pisces moon is not appearing, so it can remain theoretical. It is appearing because it requires expression in the real world. Every intuitive realization, every emotional breakthrough, every moment of certainty that emerged from beyond logic, all of it points toward action. You are being shown something for a reason. The visions, the insights, the internal knowing, they are not decorative experiences meant to remain locked inside your imagination. They are instructions. They are invitations. They are guidance designed to help you move toward the next chapter of your life with greater confidence. The era of waiting endlessly for another sign is coming to an end. The era of needing constant reassurance before taking a step forward is fading. The energy now asks something different. It asks for trust. It asks for courage. It asks you to recognize that the confirmation you keep seeking may already exist within you. Every intuitive signal you received this week, every moment when something deep inside urged you to pay attention, every feeling that refused to disappear despite your attempts to rationalize it away. Those experiences were not random. They were preparing you. They were strengthening your awareness so that when the moment arrived to move, you would recognize it. Neptune in Aries does not encourage passive observation. It encourages participation. It encourages commitment. It encourages the willingness to step beyond familiar limits and live according to the truth you have already discovered. The Pisces moon may provide the vision, but what happens next depends entirely on whether you choose to walk the path that vision reveals. Do not underestimate what begins tonight, because the next 3 days carry the potential to become a turning point that you only fully understand after it has already passed. There are certain periods in life that seem ordinary while they are happening, only to reveal their importance much later. You look back months afterward and realize that a conversation, a realization, a decision, or a moment of clarity quietly altered the direction of everything that followed. This Pisces moon window has the potential to become one of those moments. Beginning this evening, the moon moves through Pisces and initiates a 72-hour cycle during which all the themes we have explored begin operating simultaneously. The awakening of intuition, the arrival of deeper insight, the emotional release connected to the last quarter moon, the preparation for the powerful Venus and Jupiter conjunction in Cancer on June 9th. None of these developments exist separately. They are interconnected pieces of a much larger process unfolding in real time. The first signs may appear within your body before they appear anywhere else. Many people will notice a shift in their energy, a heaviness that is difficult to explain, a desire to slow down, a dreamlike quality that seems to soften the edges of ordinary reality. You may feel unusually tired despite getting enough rest. You may notice your attention drifting inward more often than usual. There can be moments when your senses seem strangely heightened, while the outside world simultaneously feels distant. It is as though part of your awareness is operating on a different frequency, paying attention to signals that normally remain hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. Rather than resisting these sensations, pay attention to them. They may be the first indications that something deeper is beginning to emerge. As the Pisces moon continues its journey, the process often moves into the dream world. This is where many people experience some of the most memorable aspects of this transit. Dreams may become unusually vivid. Emotions may feel stronger. Certain images may repeat. Some dreams may leave behind a lingering impression that follows you throughout the day. Others may feel so realistic that you wake up wondering whether they carried a message you have not yet fully understood. The important thing is not to dismiss them automatically. Throughout countless spiritual traditions, dreams have been viewed as one of the ways the subconscious communicates information that the conscious mind struggles to access directly. During this period, keeping track of what emerges may prove valuable. Details often fade quickly after waking, yet the themes, emotions, and symbols can reveal patterns that become clearer over time. What seems insignificant in the morning may suddenly make sense days or weeks later. Yet the influence of this transit does not remain confined to sleep. It begins weaving itself into waking life as well. This is where many people start noticing what appear to be unusual coincidences. Conversations seem to arrive at exactly the right moment. A phrase spoken by a stranger echoes a question you have been carrying privately. Certain numbers appear repeatedly. Songs, books, messages, or unexpected encounters seem to reflect thoughts that were occupying your attention only moments before. Whether you view these experiences as synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, or simply heightened awareness, their impact can feel remarkably personal. The reason they stand out is because they seem to create a dialogue between your inner world and your external environment. The boundary between what you are experiencing internally and what appears around you begins feeling less rigid. Patterns become easier to notice. Connections become easier to recognize. Life starts feeling less random and more responsive. This is why the next 72 hours deserve your attention. Opportunities for insight are arriving through multiple channels at once. The Mercury-Neptune square earlier in the week disrupted familiar mental patterns. It challenged the illusion that logic alone could provide every answer. That process created an opening. The Pisces moon moves into that opening and illuminates it from within. It encourages intuition, emotional honesty, and deeper awareness to take a more active role. Then, as the moon completes its transit, the exact Venus-Jupiter conjunction on June 9th introduces an entirely new phase focused on expansion, connection, and abundance. Together, these events form a sequence. One prepares the ground, one plants the seed, one supports the growth that follows. People who consciously engage with this process may discover that the coming weeks unfold differently than expected. Not because magic suddenly solves every problem, but because clarity changes behavior, awareness changes decisions, emotional honesty changes relationships. A single realization can alter an entire trajectory when it influences the choices that follow. Months from now, some individuals may look back and recognize that these 3 days marked the beginning of a significant shift. Decisions that once felt overwhelming became surprisingly clear. Paths that seemed hidden suddenly became visible. Questions that generated confusion for months finally found resolution. What once felt impossible to understand started making sense. The fog lifted. The direction appeared. The next step became obvious. Yet the same energetic opportunities will surround everyone, whether they consciously participate or not. The difference lies in awareness. Some people will notice the invitations. Others will ignore them. Some will pause long enough to listen. Others will rush past without reflection. Some will recognize that transformation often begins quietly before it becomes visible. Others will dismiss the experience entirely and continue repeating familiar cycles. The energy itself does not force a particular outcome. It simply creates an opening. What happens afterward depends on how each person chooses to engage with it. This is why your presence here matters. Out of all the content available to consume, all the distractions competing for attention, something led you to spend time with this message. Whether you interpret that as coincidence, curiosity, intuition, or something deeper, the result remains the same. You are here. And perhaps that alone is worth paying attention to. Maybe a part of you already sensed that something important was approaching. Maybe some deeper layer of awareness recognized the timing before your conscious mind did. Whatever brought you here, the invitation is simple. Remain open during these next 3 days. Remain attentive. Allow yourself to observe rather than immediately judge. Be honest about what you feel. Be honest about what needs to be released. Be honest about what you already know deep down but have been reluctant to acknowledge. Let old stories complete their cycle. Allow new possibilities to enter. Give yourself permission to listen more closely to the signals emerging from within. Because when this Pisces Moon journey concludes, the most meaningful change may not be how you see the world around you. The most meaningful change may be how you see yourself. And when self-perception changes, everything else eventually follows. Before we finish, I want to sincerely thank you for spending this time with me and sharing this journey. If this message resonated with you and you enjoy exploring these deeper astrological insights, consider subscribing so you can continue receiving future content. Your support truly helps this community grow. I would also love to hear what you experienced during this transit, so feel free to share your thoughts, realizations, dreams, or observations in the comments. Until our next conversation, take care of yourself, stay aware, stay open, and continue following the path that is unfolding before you.